The Last of Us Part 2 is usually talked about in terms of its story and why people loved or hated it. But if you only focus on the narrative choices, you miss what the game is actually doing through gameplay. So instead of asking whether the game is fun or whether I personally agree with its decisions, the critique looks at how The Last of Us Part 2 uses design to shape how the player feels and what the player is responsible for. Through forced actions, limited agency, and intentional discomfort, the game makes the player complicit in violence and then actively messes with that sense of certainty by forcing a shift in perspective. One thing that makes video games different from movies or books is that meaning doesn't just come from what you see, but from what you're required to do. Ian Bogost talks about this through the idea of procedural rhetoric, where games communicate ideas through their rules and systems. That matters here because The Last of Us Part 2 isn't just telling a story about violence and revenge, it's building those ideas directly into how you play. For a large part of the game, you experience the world through Ellie, and right away, the combat does something interesting. Enemies don't feel anonymous. When you kill someone, other enemies will literally call out their name. They panic, they react emotionally, and you can hear them realizing that someone they knew is gone. That one mechanic alone changes how combat feels. Instead of enemies being interchangeable obstacles, the game keeps reminding you that these are people who exist in relationships with each other. What makes that uncomfortable is that it's happening while you're still playing. It's not a cutscene you can distance yourself from. You're still moving, still aiming, still trying to survive, while the game is making sure you hear the emotional fallout of what you just did. The sound design, the close camera, and the weight of the animations all work together to make violence feel personal and exhausting instead of powerful. And the game doesn't really give you a way out of that discomfort. You can't choose a non-violent path. You can't skip these encounters. To keep playing, you have to keep going forward, even if it starts to feel wrong. That's where the idea of complicity comes in. You're not just watching the story unfold, you're actively participating in it, even when you don't fully agree with what's happening. Then, the game makes its biggest and most controversial move. It switches you from playing as Ellie to playing as Abby. And this isn't just a story twist, it's a gameplay decision that completely disrupts the player's emotional alignment. Up until this point, you've likely built a strong attachment to Ellie's perspective. Whether you agree with her actions or not, she's the lens you've been given. The Switch doesn't ask if you're ready for a new perspective, it just forces it. What's important is that you don't observe Abby from a distance. You have to play as her, you have to survive as her, fight as her, and spend hours inhabiting her point of view. Mechanically, you're doing many of the same things you did as Ellie, but emotionally, it feels very different. The game is basically saying, if your sympathy comes from who you control, then let's see what happens when control changes. This shift also forces you to rethink violence you already took part in. Moments that felt justified or necessary earlier now feel more complicated. Those enemy callouts you heard before, the names, the panic, the grief, start to mean something different when you're on the other side of the conflict. The game doesn't let you pretend those moments didn't matter. It makes you live with the consequences of actions you already carried out. What I think the game is really critiquing here is the way players are trained to treat their character as automatically right. Most games reward you for identifying completely with whoever you control. The Last of Us Part 2 pushes back against that by showing how fragile that identification actually is. Your sense of who deserves empathy shifts the moment the game takes control away from you. And that discomfort, the frustration, the resistance, even the anger some players feel, is kind of the point. The game isn't trying to give you a clean moral answer, it's forcing you to sit inside moral messiness without giving you an easy escape. In the end, The Last of Us Part 2 uses gameplay itself as a form of critique by making enemies call out to each other, by refusing to give the player moral shortcuts, and by forcing the switch from Ellie to Abby. The game turns player agency into responsibility rather than power. Its impact doesn't come from telling you what to think. It comes from making you do things, making you feel uncomfortable about them, and not letting you look away while it happens. Thank you all for listening to my critique on The Last of Us Part 2. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope it was entertaining for you guys. Thanks.